Obsessive compulsive disorder, just like it sounds, is made up of two primary parts: obsessions and compulsions. However, there are people who feel that they don't experience compulsions and only are aware of their obsessions, and this is usually referred to as pure O. However, this is actually a bit of a misnomer. There's not really a thing of having only obsessions and no compulsions. So before you scream at me, just bear with me. So what happens is, in a lot of cases, people are only aware of their obsessions, but not of any compulsions, because they don't have any obvious, overt compulsions. However, that doesn't mean they don't have any compulsions at all. It means that they're doing compulsions that they're not aware of, which are almost certainly compulsions that are going on in the mind, which people with over behavioural compulsions also do, the mental compulsions as well. It's just they're more aware of the external ones. So what's really confusing for people with this kind of OCD, that's referred to usually as pure O, is how do I do ERP if I don't have any compulsions? Well, the thing is, you will have compulsions. It's just that you don't recognise them or realise what they are, and they might be very hard to root out. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the kind of things that I'm referring to here. So there are two primary kinds of internal mental compulsion. One is when you engage with your thoughts. So engaging with them means grabbing onto them, thinking about them, that kind of thing. So the kinds of way you will engage with any thoughts or images or sensations or urges is, for example, rationalizing, trying to explain them away. Reassurance, so trying to reassure yourself, that these thoughts are not true, they don't mean what you think they mean. Checking. Now, checking, internal sort of mental checking, this is actually a really big one. Do all sorts of different ways that people check internally, like use it as a mental check, like going over in your mind, now, did I actually lock the door? Or you'll check, for example, do I still feel in love with my partner? So like a mental check about a feeling, or a check about a sensation, like did I have any kind of physical reaction to that? Was I turned on by that? Or a check for whether you are still appropriately horrified. Did I feel terrified or horrified by that thought? Check, do I still have the thoughts? That's a big one. A lot of people, that's the first check they do in the morning. So a lot of this checking goes on internally. So it's not about checking like I check the door or I check the window, but it's about doing sort of mental checks, going things in your mind. Preparation, so this is like preparing, mental preparation, so preparing yourself for how you're going to deal with something or avoid something, or preparing yourself for doing a compulsion that you might do later. And introspection, now this is what I call when people spend a lot of time spending too much time trying to understand why they have OCD and what it means. So really kind of trying to think about deep down reasons for the thoughts. And the big problem with this one is it just keeps you engaged with the thoughts rather than being able to let them go. So all of these ones that come under engaging with the thoughts, they all mean that you add more importance to the thoughts. They're going to make the thoughts more obvious to you, and therefore they're going to become stronger and more frequent. Then we kind of have the absolute opposite, which is suppressing your thoughts. So you may engage with your thoughts and suppress your thoughts. They're not necessarily either one or the other. So suppressing the thoughts, lots of different ways people do that. So the big one is avoidance. So avoid going near something that's going to trigger your thoughts. Perhaps if you have some kind of religious fears, you might avoid going near a graveyard, or avoid seeing a symbol of the cross or something like that. So anything that you do to try and avoid those thoughts coming on. Pushing the thoughts away, well, I'm sure that everyone's experienced that, trying to kind of mentally get rid of them in your mind. Changing thoughts from one kind of thought to another, or replacing your thoughts. So if I've got say I have a bad thought, I'm then going to replace it with a good thought, and that somehow makes it okay. And that's very similar to this neutralising, saying a prayer, doing something that sort of magically in your mind makes the thought okay and not count as a bad thought anymore. So this is not necessarily an exhaustive list, but it's an idea for you to see just how many different ways there are of having internal compulsions that you might not really have recognised, and you might not realise are part of the really unhelpful OCD cycle, where you have an obsession and you attach some kind of meaning to it, and then you perform a response, a compulsion, in order to get rid of the very negative, distressing feelings that come with the obsession. So now that I've explained this, hopefully you can have a look for yourself, over the next few days. Try and notice, am I doing anything in my head? Am I doing anything when I get a thought or a feeling or a sensation or an urge? Am I doing anything internally that I haven't maybe noticed before? And in another video, I'm going to talk more about how you can actually do exposure and response prevention when you only have internal compulsions instead of the kind of behavioural compulsions that most ERP usually talks about. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it, sorry about that, you can still do ERP, you can still expose yourself to your fears. No, it's just about understanding exactly how to do it, and I'm going to talk you through that.